Good afternoon. I am just starting the live stream. I gotta go find it because, oh, maybe it's not gonna talk. Oh, okay, that's weird. It's not talking, which is great. I just don't know why. Because usually I can hear it like coming back to me, but it's not. So, cool. Hi, guys. All right, we are going to start in. Oh, I wonder. Oh, you know what? I think it's because I didn't push go live because I didn't finish writing because I was checking to see now where to go. I was checking to see where we were at. So, oh no, it says it's live. Is it going live on YouTube? It says live on YouTube. Okay, cool. Well, I guess I did push go. All right, guys, we are in First Corinthians 7. And again, I love how God's like, Lori, just show up and say words. And I'm like, okay. And I read the first couple verses. I'm like, great. I'm so glad that like God just speaks through me. And I don't have to try to figure out what his point is going to be with this because it's always different depending on who's listening or reading. So here we go. Now, concerning the things what of ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have their own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise unto the wife, uh, and the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power over her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power over his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent for a time. Okay, let's let's unpack that a little bit. Okay. And as I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, there's a couple different implications, and which one am I going to talk about? And what's being called for is um, the idea that we have human experiences, and our human experiences, uh, our human experiences will dictate our life until they don't, right? And so what I feel like this is really talking about is yes, do life, do all of life, have a husband, have a spouse, have a wife, have a partner, have a thing. Okay. Have a thing, but recognize that's not the ultimate thing. Your aloneness will never, ever, 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 never, ever, ever, ever be about if you have a spouse or not a spouse, partner, not a partner. Okay. Because we can have a partner and still be lonely. However, in our human, if you need to go get a spouse so that you're not lonely, go get a spouse, go do the thing. And then guess what the next verse says? Have a time. Defraud ye not one another, except to be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your inconsistency. I don't really. Okay, well, guess what? God's going to tell me what we're supposed to talk about with that. But here's the point, guys. If you have a spouse and you think that your spouse is going to meet all your needs, you're screwed. Right? And so recognize there's a time to maybe separate from your spouse in order to what? Now, what's fasting and prayer? You can take it literally and do some fasting. but technically fasting is just being without something. So even if you're being without your spouse, to do what? Meditate on who you are in Christ. Meditate on the aloneness is not about your spouse. It's about you not being plugged in. Did you guys get that? It doesn't matter how great your spouse is. If you're not plugged in, you will always feel alone. No matter how perfect your spouse is, no matter what your spouse ever does for you. Okay? The emptiness will be based on not being plugged in, right? So give yourself a time to fasting and prayer. Come together again, right? Now, you don't have to stay apart from people. Once you recognize and you plug in and you go, oh, I'm full from what Christ gives me. Now I can come back together in this physical relationship and actually have something to contribute. Yeah? Sexy, right? Okay, and come back together again, that Satan tempt you not for your inconsistency. I think what's coming up with that, you guys, is it doesn't matter if you're together and apart and together and apart and together and apart and apart and together and like, don't get caught up in all that, because all of that is like what's right. It's right to do this, it's right to do that. Don't let that voice of something's wrong with you get in the way. All that matters is how often do you have to come back and plug in, right? We talked about this yesterday. What did Jesus say at the Last Supper, right? This is my body, this is my blood. Eat it, drink it. When? As often as you need to remember. Remember what? Your identity. You're already right standing before God, right? The voice of Satan is just the voice inside your head that says you're not in right standing before God. Yeah? Awesome. Okay, that was way easier than I thought it was going to be. Watch, now there's going to be some more fuckery. And then I'm going to be like, oh, okay. For I would that all men were given as I myself, which Paul, I think he's talking about being single. Well, let me just finish reading before I just assume I know what I'm talking about. Okay. But every man hath his proper gift of God, one after the manner and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and the widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And unto the married I commit ye not. Oh, command ye not. I, but not the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband. But, and if she departs, let me go back to all of this. Guys, ultimately, the bottom line with all of this is what I've already said. Don't get caught up in your physical relationships as right or wrong, good or bad, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, according to what religion or non-religion says. The point is, what is God telling you when you're plugged in? Just do that. Okay? Just do that. If you're content being single, be single. If you want to get married, get married. Right? I'm going to say something politically, or I mean, like religiously very incorrect. If you want to not get legally married and just have a partner, if that's in alignment for you and the God inside of you, a legal agreement isn't anything before God, it's before man. Right? So do you. And I think it's going to talk about like something in choice here in a minute, but okay. But if they cannot contain themselves, okay, marry, lest ye burn. Here's the other thing that's coming up as I reread that. You guys, if you are functioning from your physical selves, like keep in mind that like some of this is about actual like sex from the perspective of I do you guys sense my trepidation in like I don't want to just say the words that are coming up because it's so like a verse from how we've understood like what's in the Bible, or what we've been not what's in the Bible, a verse from what we've been taught the Bible means. Okay. So, guess what this is about, guys? This Bible study is about me. Oh, it's bringing up tears because it's about me just saying what God's showing me to give freedom to people and not about what the church says. Okay. So, here it is. I'm just saying what is coming up. If you're functioning from your human self and you want to have sex, go find somebody to have consensual sex with. Because if you try to stuff your physical desire for sex, it's going to overrun you. And then you're going to do shitty things. You're going to be in relationships that aren't healthy. You're going to force somebody to have sex with you. You're going to allow somebody to have sex with you that you don't want to have sex with because you've let that passion like build up to a point. Now it's like a pressure cooker and it's going to pop. So if you have a physical desire, go consensually by choice, take care of that, whether that's with yourself or someone else. Just allow it to be in choice, because if you stuff it, it will always lead to the very thing that you are afraid of. All right, there you go. I said it. Bam. All right. And let unto the married I command ye not, I but the Lord. Let not the wife depart from the husband. Guys, and again, let's talk about this, okay? Um, my first husband is Jesus. My first relationship is stepping into my rightness before God in the consciousness of Christ, right? So if that means that your physical relationship can stay. If that means your physical relationship shouldn't be there, then don't stay. And again, I'm not condoning, just like Paul's saying, I'm not condoning stay or go. What I'm saying is be plugged in and make a decision from there. Okay. And if she departs, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. Okay. And guys, here's what's really interesting, because we started with that physical aspect. I feel like God wants me to like really focus on, okay, that spiritual connection between us and God. Okay. So, and if she departs, let her remain unmarried or reconciled to her husband. Okay. What does that mean? Just like get plugged back in, or don't plug back in to something that's not your identity in Christ. And guess what? And let not the husband put away his wife. Guess what? That's a promise, guys. Jesus will always be there to say, yeah, come on back. Like I had a time at one point in time, this is a long story. So I'm going to shorten it. I'm going to take out a bunch of the details. But at one point in time, basically, I was like, all those people over there don't claim Jesus and they seem to be having a good time. And God's like, oh, well, what does that mean for you? And I'm like, maybe you're not real. And he's like, do you want me to not be real? I'm like, yeah. So like, I'm like, and he's like, fine, I'm not real. So I claim I was an atheist for like 6 months because I'm like, fine, God's not real. And guess what? I grew by leaps and bounds. I had so much like falling off of the bondage. And then like 6 months later, I'm like, okay, so I kind of miss you. And he's like, do you want me to be real again? I'm like, yes, please. It's like, okay, I'm real again. Right. And then I was right back in relationship with him. Why? Because he never wavers. I do, but he doesn't. Right. And I feel like that's more of what that's saying is let not the husband put away the wife. Like Jesus just never will. God never will. They're always just waiting for you to come back. Go do whatever you want to do. Just recognize that that's not your identity. Come on. All right. But to the rest speak I not, the Lord. If any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell in him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath the husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. Now it's so interesting because now we're popping back into the physical, right? We went from the physical to the spiritual to the physical, right? And isn't that what we talked about before? We've got to go back and forth. There's two parts of us. There's a human part and a spiritual part. If we don't address both, we will never, ever live in the ease and the joy and the promise that God gives us. Okay. So we're jumping back into the physical. If you are in a relationship with somebody and they don't claim Jesus, if you're claiming Jesus and they want to be with you, stay there. If you're claiming Jesus and they don't want to be there, let them go. Simple as that. You plug in, mind your own business. Let them do what they want to do. Be an example of what it looks like to be plugged in and let them make the decision if they stay or go. No coincidence that this is part of what we're talking about. Remember when I was like, I don't want to go to First Corinthians, and God's like, that's what I want you to teach from. Yeah, because guys, that's what's being experienced in my life right now, right? Okay. And a woman which hath not a husband, believeth not, for the unbelieving husband. Oh, did I read that one? And the woman which hath a husband. Okay. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, and not are they holy. Okay. So guys, this is not saying that my spouse's salvation is based on mine, because we could read it like that. For an unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife. Okay. In our physical, ooh, this is so good. In our physical, it's not saying that my husband or wife is sanctified, saved by my choices. Am I an example to leave space for what's available? Yes. Yes. When I'm plugged in, I become an invitation for someone else to plug in, but they're not plugged in based on my plugged in. And if you think your spouse is going to get plugged in based on your plugged in, then you're hoping for something that is none of your business, right? This is actually what happened to Job, because Job would pray for God to forgive his kids for their naughtiness. None of our business. Plug in, mind your own business, right? But here's what's actually really sexy about this verse. If I look at my spirit as the feminine and my human as the masculine, guess what? Now, because I'm two parts to one whole, if I love on my human, my spirit is sanctified. If I love on my spirit, my human is sanctified. Did I say that the right way? If I love on my human, my spirit is sanctified. If I love on my spirit, my human is sanctified. Because there's the two becoming one. Now, in the physical, I'm only an invitation. In the spiritual, it's the same because it's just me. Or, ooh, let's go even more. God sanctifies me. And when I know that I'm sanctified, it perpetuates the relationship because God never changes. Sexy, right? That's so cool. Okay. Else, were your children unclean? Not, or now are they holy? Okay. And basically, you guys, that just all that's talking about, I feel like that bounces back into When I'm spiritually plugged in, everything I produce is awesome. When I'm not plugged in, whatever I produce, not awesome, right? And when I say awesome and not awesome, when I'm plugged in, everything I produce is eternal. When I'm not plugged in, everything I produce is finite and transient. Excuse me, all of a sudden, I'm like hiccuping and burping and, oh, yeah, let's get rid of some of those like stuck beliefs about shit. Okay, but if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. Oh, we already talked about that. A brother or sister is not under bondage in such case, but God has called us to peace. We already talked about that. If you're plugged in and they want to stay with you, let them stay. If you're plugged in and they're like, peace out, then let them go. Right? Your right standing before God is never in question. I mean, maybe by you, but never by him. Right? We're already in right standings. Regardless of what happens outside of us, we are already in right standing. Right? So let people choose whatever they want to choose. Mind your own business. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband, or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou save their wife? Right? And I'm going back to what we just talked about. In the physical, none of my business. In the spiritual, inevitable. But as God has distributed to every man as the Lord hath called, everyone, so let him walk. And so ordain I in all churches. Okay. I'm going to go up to the top because I'm like, what the heck is that about? I'm going to go back up to the top. But God has distributed to every man as the Lord hath called. Okay. Mind your own business. If the Lord's called you, mind your own business. If the Lord hasn't called somebody else, mind your own business. And so ordain I all churches. And basically, like, I feel like what that's saying, well, let me look up the word ordain just to see. Appoint, institute, give, order. Yeah. So guess what Paul's saying? Because Paul was writing letters to the church to say, hey, this is how to function in your plugged inness. Okay, I'm telling all of you churches, right? Because now he's going back to the physical. I'm telling all of you churches, mind your own business. Okay. Especially even if another church says, like, let's use an example that I'm aware of, right? Some churches say in order to be baptized with water, you need to be dunked. Some churches say you need to be sprinkled. Mind your own business. If you want to dunk, dunk. If you want to sprinkle, sprinkle. It doesn't make the other person wrong. Mind your own. Okay. Okay. In any man called being circumcised, let him not become uncircumcised. Is any called uncircumcised? Let him not be circumcised. Guys, mind your own business. This is so cool. Look at me being all bossy. I'm being all bossy. Mind your own business. Okay, here's the point of what this is, though, right? Like, he's telling people who are plugged in, worry about being plugged in, and that's it. And let everyone else worry about what's plugged in for them, right? If you want to get circumcised, get circumcised. If you don't, don't. If you want to drink alcohol, drink alcohol. If you don't, don't. It doesn't change your right standing. It just says that your human came to have a particular experience. Mind your own. Okay. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but keeping the commandments of God. Guys, what are the commandments of God? To you. What's God telling you based on your plugged inness? Mind your own business. I seriously, like, I'm going to make a t-shirt. Mind your own business. Okay. And then I'm going to be like, 1 Corinthians 7:19. Mind your own business. Okay, let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Guess what that's saying, guys? Take a wild guess. I'm going to give you one guess because I know you'll get it right. Mind your own business, right? Mind your own business. Let every man abide in the same calling where he was called. If Jesus says, have some alcohol, have some alcohol. If Jesus says, hey, for you, don't drink alcohol, don't drink alcohol, right? You know what I think is really amazing about, like, okay, I might get a little spiritually righteous right now, so I'm pre-warning you. Why? Because guys, I still have judgment in me, and not the kind of judgment that we talked about yesterday. The kind of judgment that is, that's wrong, they're wrong, okay? But I'm going to be a little judgy. So people who teach that the Bible teaches not to drink at all, do they not understand that the first miracle recorded in the book that they're claiming that says don't drink is Jesus turning water into wine? Now, that in itself is pretty cool and sexy. But guys, listen to this. Are you ready? They were already drunk. Jesus didn't just turn water into wine for sober people. He's like, this motherfucking party up in here, and they ran out of wine. And you know what? I want them to remember their identity, that I am going to provide for them. So guess what? We're going to make the best wine and we're going to feed it to these drunk people. That's so averse from at least a lot of what I was taught in the church. And guys, guess what Jesus came to preach? The gospel. What's the gospel? The good news. What's the good news? You're already in right standing. Plug into that, mind your own business, and have a blast in your life. Have fun. Just go have fun. Are you plugged in? Go have fun. That's as hard as it has to be. All right, moving on. Okay. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it, but if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is the Lord's. Free man. Likewise, also, he that is called being free is Christ's servant. Guys, ooh, I like that one. Guess why I like that one? Because, like, if you don't know you're free, being a servant of Christ feels like bondage. If you're plugged in and you feel like it's bondage to obey, I'm going to say that again. If you're plugged in and it feels like bondage, you're not plugged in. You might think you're plugged in, but you're not plugged in if you're functioning from bondage. If you're struggling to obey God, you're not plugged in. Cause and effect. The effect of the cause of being plugged in is freedom. Cool. Okay. I get so freaking excited about this. Can you guys tell? And then I get all bossy, like, let me boss you and tell you what to do. Or let me just tell you what's up with this. But I get so passionate, you guys, because this is how to live free. Do you want to live free? I want to live free. I want to live freer and freer every day. That's life and life more abundant. Okay. Brethren, let every man within where he was called abide in. Oh, did I already read that? He brought the. Oh, wait. Nope. I skipped some. For he that are called unto the Lord. Oh, yeah. Okay. For those that are called, okay, you're a free man. Be free. And then you're Christ's servant. Well, what does that mean? It means you're plugged in. And so you're just going to do what God's called you to do. But guys, it's not about like, I have to do this because I have to prove that I'm right. It's like, no, you're a servant based on the fact that, of course, you are now a vessel that just makes manifest love. And now you're just doing what you're being prompted to do. Why? Because it feels freaking good and it makes your life freer and funner. If your life is not free and fun, you're not plugged in. Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to pull that back just a little bit. I'm talking to mature believers. Okay? If you're listening to this, then you're a mature believer in the consciousness of Christ, not religion, the consciousness of Christ. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, she is just ridiculous. Good. Go drink milk. Okay. And if you're listening to this going, oh my gosh, Lori's giving us like freedom to just go sin. Paul's going to bring that up in a minute. Does this mean you're giving us allowance to go sin? God forbid. No, this is for mature believers. Mature believers function from their freedom, which means they're functioning from love, which means they're not going to do douchey things. Okay. Okay. This is not coming out. Okay. You're Christ's servant. You are bought with a price. Be not ye the servant of man. Now, you're bought with a price. What was the price? Well, this is back into our human, right? Because it's saying, hey, guys, like Jesus already proved to you that you're already in right standings. Now, if I don't understand that Jesus came to reveal something, not to cause something, then I can read this and go, I was bought with a price. Look, Jesus caused it. Great. Whatever you have to believe, right? Because if you're super drinking milk, you're not going to get any of this. If you're kind of like dipping your steak in some milk, then you're going to hear this and go, I was bought with a price. That means you were that valuable. You're that valuable that Jesus came and died for you on the cross to give you right standing before God. Fantastic, right? Whether it be revealed or whether it be caused, as long as it's from Christ, who cares? Okay. Brethren, let every man wherewithin he is called, wherewithin he abide. We already talked about that. Now, concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord. Yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose, therefore, that this is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man so to be. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to loose. Okay, that's going back to that. Okay, we've shifted. So let's talk a little bit about like concerning virgins. What's coming up to like really say in this is it's more about a like immature believer. If you're a virgin, if you like don't if you've never known what it feels like to be plugged in, like I don't have anything to say to you because you're going to be functioning from a different place than what this specifically is talking about. So, hey, I don't have anything to say to you yet. What I have to say to you is just keep following your prompting to dig in, right? Keep following what God is calling you into, right? Because it's not eating steak yet. Okay. Grace, grace, grace. I suppose there is good for the present distress, right? Okay. I suppose, therefore, it's good for the present distress. Like if you're distressed and you're like, I just need God to save me. Okay. You're not going to be over here trying to eat steak. Okay. Thou art bound to a wife, seek not to be loosed. Art thou loosed from a wife? Okay, we're going back to the same thing. Where are you functioning right now? If you're functioning in a place where you have to obey, just obey until you get to a place where you're functioning freely. Sorry, I have like a hair that's tickling my nose. Right? So if you're functioning from a place where you're drinking milk, keep drinking milk. Eventually, you're going to start eating steak. If you're eating steak, don't try to go back and drink milk. Okay. Okay, so, but, and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned, and if thou virgin marry, thou shalt not sin. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. Okay, so, guys, now we're going back to physical relationship, right? If you feel lonely, marry somebody. But guess what? Now you're going to have some problems. Why? Well, because you thought that what you married was going to be the solution. Ooh, guys, and guess what's coming up right now? Regardless of what you marry, whether you marry a person, whether you marry money, whether you marry your job, whether you marry your beauty, whether you marry your Facebook profile, whatever you are connected to that you think gives you value, you'll have problems. Good news. He says, hey, but guess what? Don't worry. Why don't worry? I got you. I'll spare you. What will you spare? Grace. Grace is going to say it doesn't matter. You can't screw it up. Like you're already in right standings. You're the only one who doesn't know it. God already knows it. Jesus knows it. Holy Spirit knows it. Right? You're the only one who doesn't know it. Do whatever you got to do. Just remember, all you have to do is go, oh shit, I'm not plugged in. Plug back in. It's no problem. But this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remaineth that both that they have wives be as thou that they had no one. Again, guys, the physical life is short. Don't get caught up in your physical marriage thinking that that's something. Stop it. Plug back in. That's what's important, right? Act like you have nothing out here. Plug back in. And then everything out here won't have a problem, right? You have problems when you're married to something other than Christ. When you're married to Christ, there's no problem. Now you're just functioning whatever he's called you to. Okay. Am I going to get to the end of this? Oh my gosh, you guys, this is a long chapter. I might not get done with it. I'm really trying to stay under 45 minutes. Okay. Saying to brethren, this is a short time, remain as there are none, and they'll weep as though they wept not, and they rejoice as though they rejoice not, and then they buy as though they possess not, and then they use this world as, okay, guys, that verse 30, sexy, right? Because again, when we're plugged in, it eliminates all of the shit from the physical world. When we plug in, every ounce of who we thought we were gone the minute I plug in. Right? The identity that I think is me, that I married into, whether it be money, spouse, job, pornography, whatever, like it doesn't really matter. If you've plugged into something because you didn't know your identity, the minute that you plug back into Christ, all of that goes away. You're already in right standings. You're already forgiven, past, present, and future. Right? That's basically what that's saying. That's so cool. And they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashions of this world passeth away. Same thing, guys. It's saying the same thing, right? If you're plugged into something other than Christ, if you're married to something other than Christ, if you've given over your identity to something other than Christ, all of that's going to pass away. Plug back into Christ and all of that passes away, right? So don't get caught up in the shit of the world. Just plug in. But I would have you without carelessness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how may please the Lord. But he that's married cares about the things of the world, how he may please his wife. Guys, again, what we're talking about here is if you're plugged into something, anything in the world, that's what you care about. When you're plugged into Christ, that's what you care about. Wherever you're plugged in, that's what you're going to care about. In fact, this is what it's talking about. The verse that says you can't love God and money. That's what it's talking about. Where you plugged in, not what do you have. It's where you plugged in. Okay, there's a difference also between a wife and a virgin, and the unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. Okay, guys, what's really cool about that verse, the difference between an unmarried woman and a virgin. Okay. Remember, when we're talking about a virgin, we're talking about somebody who's never been plugged in. Now they're just functioning through obedience, through the work. That's okay. There's a time for that. Right. But if you've been plugged in and now you're not plugged in, that's what it's talking about being unmarried. Yes, that was cool. I've never seen that before. I love that that just came through. Okay. And this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare unto you, but for that which is comely, and that may attempt unto the Lord without distraction. This is one of the things we actually talk a lot about in the container, because the container, like where I coach, is like taking all of this and making it super personal. Okay, so what does that look like? Somebody comes to me and they're like, Lori, like this is what's happening in my life, and I get to go, dude, guess what? You're not plugged in. Right? Now, and what he's saying is, guys, I'm telling you when you're plugged in, when you're not plugged in, what are the results of being plugged in and not plugged in? But he's saying, I'm not telling you this to snare you. I'm not telling you this because you're doing something wrong. I'm not telling you this so that you go back into your identity of what's wrong with you out of right standing from God. I'm telling you this so that you can be aware if you're plugged in or not plugged in. If you're supposed to be functioning through obedience or through freedom, right? It's not a snare to go back to your old understanding of your identity, but it's an invitation into the promise. Okay. So don't get all distracted. Okay. That's what that's saying. Okay. What time is it? Oh, I got 1 minute and I have 5 verses left. But if any man thinks that his behaveth himself uncomingly towards the virgin, if he passes the flower of age and need, you know what, guys, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to make a note that we're going to start at verse 36, because I think there's some depth in here that I want to hit that I won't be able to hit in 1 minute. And I really thought, like, ooh, if I can do a chapter plus a day, we're going to zip through this. And God's like, yeah, Lori, it's not up to you. It's up to me. And I'm going to have you talk about things that I want you to talk about, not what you want to talk about. So I'm going to make a note that we're going to start at 1 Corinthians 7:36 tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then. Bye.